everyone. I'm Yasmin, and this is Main Character with Yasmin. Welcome back to your favorite podcast in the entire world. Guinness World Record said this is the sexiest podcast. I don't make the rules. Guinness does. Wherever Guinness, Phineas.
Guinness?
The Guinness.
Unreal.
I'm sorry. Are you hearing that voice that's with me right now? Are you hearing that voice? Because if you're listening to this, you're gonna be like, who the fuck is that? But if you're seeing this, you know who the fuck it is. This is, I'm just so excited for this guest because this is someone I've really wanted on the podcast for a very long time. She is someone very special to me. She is an actress, she's a director, she's a writer, she's a producer. She was in The Last Kingdom on Netflix. She was in Red Rose on Netflix. She just had her directorial debut with Oh Rats. And that is coming out. When is it coming out?
That is
Soon. And that's pending. We have Amelia Clarkson here.
Oh my god, it's an amazing to be here. Well, in my house.
And yeah, we're in her house. Where are we? In London.
We are in Clapton, people. If you're familiar with London, you know that it's just where we, wear the coolest clothes and drink the coolest craft beers, and we're just the super cool ones.
Isn't Clapton, isn't that the gonorrhea or chlamydia?
That's the clap. That's chlamydia.
That's what I said, but I thought someone also said it was short for gonorrhea, but that doesn't make sense. Could that be glap?
You know what I was told recently? How good, to clear out your gut and reform microbiomes in your gut.
What?
Take medication for chlamydia, and it will literally kill the bacteria in your gut, and then you can basically start again.
So we all have chlamydia now, guys, and we are going to take the medication to clear out our gut. I'm so excited to have Amelia here because, well, it's so weird calling you Amelia because I call we all call her Millie. We met in 2019 when I was an intern at the Young Actors Theatre Institute in Islington. You were an actor there doing drama school, and I was an intern under the creative director. And it was, I remember the first day I came in with a pink blazer and a skirt, and I was I'm ready for my schoolgirl London moment. But you guys were all in sweatpants, who the fuck is this girl showing up?
It was Elwood's hit campus, but in the best way. Everyone was just who the hell is that?
I can't imagine that being what the fuck is this Yankee doing here? Yankee Doodle. But we just became friends. We went to go see shows together. We would have really incredible chats, and it wasn't just a regular chat of talking about what we want to do in life and who we are. It was more of meaningful chat. Yeah. I just found out what DMC was, by the way, this weekend when I went to Ibiza this weekend, and it's deep meaningful chat if you don't know what DMC is. And we would talk about everything and nothing all at once. And I feel so often we would fantasize and romanticize what our future's going to be what we want the world to be what we want to see in the world. But we were talking about winning Oscars, but we're actually in a pub in Shoreditch having a cigarette.
Yeah. But also we, even last night we did it. But yet we also about, the where we see ourselves going and already existing there.
Yeah.
For example, now we're in my house doing a podcast together, and it's because we're super fucking successful and cool. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because we exist in that plane, and yeah, that's where it's at.
I think it's a lot of times what we're going to dive into on this episode, and I think this is something that I'm really grateful for Millie to be chatting with me about, is do we live in fantasy land? And is that a good thing? And how do you romanticize the life that you want to have, but also acknowledging reality? And is there a limit? And how do we find that balance?
It's I live in a fantasy land completely, but I wouldn't call myself deluded.
Yeah.
I think I'm so aware that I'm living in a fantasy land, probably as a coping mechanism for a lot of things, but also I'm not deluded, and yet I don't think it's impossible. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I do know what you mean. And I feel like, and we'll get there after the break, but I want to chat about our earliest memories as children. I feel so often as actors, as artists and creatives in this world, we started so young. We started so young with the imagination of like when our teachers would be saying do maths or do history, but we're just imagining. Like my earliest memory of fantasizing was me on the toilet with a little like potty stool because I was so short, singing Breakaway by Amelia Clarkson, thinking this is when I'm going to be winning my Oscar. But in reality, my mom and dad are like, shut up, like you're being so loud. But I felt like that was my escape, and I felt like that was just the beginning of what my whole life was going to become.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And I'm excited to hear about yours, so we'll get there right after the break.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, we are back. So we have the Amelia Clarkson here. We have the girl. She's having her cup of tea, just like every other Brit.
Peppermint. Digestive system.
Yes, I know. We've been having really bad IBS, so we were like doing gas all last night, like next to each other. I felt like our guests were like playing like fucking chess with each other with our butts forward facing each other, and we're like.
The tennis of
IBS. Yeah, that's crazy. Fantasy. So what does fantasy mean to you?
Well, in terms of like in my life, I very much do live like half and half in reality, half in a daydream. I'm always daydreaming. But I'm daydreaming. The daydreaming ranges between daydreaming about things that are very like doable, like completing a 10K, which I've done before. Like I'll fantasize on my run about like making that like doing that 10K, you know, tomorrow, or like, you know, not like lying to myself, but like seeing myself doing those things. And then, you know, of course, I mean, acceptance speech Oscars.
Yeah, obviously. I want to bring up what the definition of fantasy means, and that is it's a broad range of mental experiences mediated by the faculty of imagination in the human brain and marked by an expression of certain desires through vivid mental imagery. And these scenarios and experiences are usually related to unattainable circumstances. And when I read that, I was like, yeah, I hate that. I hate that it said unattainable circumstances. I think it's unattainable in that moment because you are not there. But I think, what were you going to say? You had a thought.
I was also going to say, like, okay, so are they saying that fantasy is, because I was also going to say, like, some fantasies that I have, I've thought, like, the connotation of the word fantasy feels so, like, sci-fi, like, fairy-like, fairy tale-like. But I like fairy tales, like the Brothers Grimm or whatever, like, dark fantasies exist, and therefore, like, what does unattainable mean if I'm like fantasizing about something bad happening or something like death, you know? So I disagree. Who defined that?
Wikipedia did, but I think fantasy, whether it's dark or whether it's good, I think it's an escape, and I think it's a way of holding optimism. Because I feel like nowadays, especially in our generation, it's so grim. Like, how are we, obviously we don't know what's going to happen in the next 10 years, unless the climate completely, is a disaster and we die in the, you know what I mean, because of World War III. So we're not going to win that Oscar, but isn't that fucking incredible to think that we will? And isn't that incredible that we get to, like, imagine our lives and our futures together? Like,
but we do, like, I mean, but we were, Yati, like, we would have fantasized things like saying, like, oh, one day me and Eva are gonna have this flat together.
And we're gonna,
like, when we were, like, younger, and we're gonna live together, and we'll live out our Sex in the City, like, we'll be, like, going on dates and coming back, and, like, seeing, and like, we totally did that, like, it took 5 years. It wasn't like it was something that we kept every day thinking about, working towards, like, we must do this. But we talked about it and we fantasized about it, and this happened, you know?
Of course. When you talk about fantasizing, and also I want to point out that fantasizing and romanticizing are one and the same. I feel like they are like twins, but like, so they have the same DNA, but they are different. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so when you talk about fantasizing the life that you want, what does that entail for you?
The life that I want, that's really tricky, because so many things have just happened to me that I would never have imagined, and yet I'm so glad and would never wish them away. So,
like what?
Like, when I fantasized about like healthy, happy romantic relationships, like I never saw it being a woman, and like right now it is. Or like when I would fantasize about getting like, or like the other way around, when I would fantasize about getting like a lead on a show, and like this, and not realizing the stress and the like things that come with that in a negative way. And so I think fantasizing, yes, it's a weird one. It's never really what you actually expect, but it is a glorious escape.
I want to touch on that. I feel like when you plan, the universe laughs. When you plan anything that you want in your life, I feel like it's never going to go that way.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I feel with fantasizing and romanticizing the life that you want, I feel like it sets you up for success. I sound like such a douchebag boy, being like,
You want success, you have to fantasize and you have to plan.
blah, blah, blah. But I actually do think it's
Well, it's a form of manifesting. Right?
it is a form of manifesting. I feel like it's a glimmer of hope that you get to have. I feel like it's that little glimmer of hope. Like right now, like I don't have a job.
Right.
I'm making this podcast freely. I'm acting, but with the writer's strike and the actor's strike going on in LA, and we can't really do anything. Obviously, standing with the unions completely and entirely. And in the UK, you can't really work unless you have a visa here, and I don't have a visa here.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of in this, so I'm in this limbo of what the fuck to do. But the one thing that genuinely gets me through the day is daydreaming about my life one day.
Yeah, and we spoke about this, we have spoken about this before, like the shame that comes with that. Like you touched on before about being a kid, and like for that moment singing Breakaway and like winning at the Oscars, and like everyone's, and then having that smack back reality of like your parents banging on the door, and like the shame that you feel afterwards. I remember the exact same thing growing up, like fantasizing about something, and then your brother runs in and is like,
What are you doing?
like, and you're a bit like, you're so ashamed, and you're like, oh, I was just tidying my
No, I'm not doing anything weird, and because there's shame that comes with imagination,
Right.
and with creativity, and that's why I feel like, especially in our generation, like our parents and their parents didn't have the opportunity to imagine and to create the life of like freedom of expression. They had to, I feel like boomers and millennials and the generations before that, they had to get up, they follow what their parents are doing, they get a job, they get married, they have kids, they settle down, white picket fence. Whereas I feel like, which is a plus for Gen Z, we get the opportunity to live the life we've always wanted, to live the life we've dreamed of having. So when we were kids, wanting to be in plays, wanting to do Shakespeare, wanting to do all of these things, now we get to fucking do it because we got to imagine it.
Yes, absolutely, and we wouldn't, like, there's so many things I dreamt about doing as a kid that I have done, but for example, I dreamt about being in the shows that I've been about, being an actor that I've been about. I never dreamt that I would also have to work in a pub alongside that to support those dreams, but hey, what a minimal cost, and actually what a life experience.
What a life experience.
Adds so much to the people that you meet, and being a creative and being in London. I mean, there's paths to fantasies that when they come true that you don't, fantasy is like, oh, it's all glorious, but there's balance, there's yin and yang to it. Like we might,
Well, obviously, and I've already touched on this on my first episode, but there is scientific proof of the more optimistic, and I mean, the happier you are, the longer you live. We just know that. But also with optimism comes imagination and comes the opportunity. I feel like with imagination, fantasy, romanticizing, you're putting yourself at the forefront of your life. You are, what I would argue, the main character of your own life, where you get to say, if I want to, I don't know, quit my job and just travel the world for a couple months, which you did. You were in Bali for like 7 weeks.
Yeah.
You can do that. Obviously, I think it's a privilege just like quit your job and do whatever you want to do, but like the world is ours. And I think capitalism and the patriarchy like to remind us that it's not, but in reality, it is.
I agree.
And with optimism and with,
I think of course there's so many levels to it, and there's so much like you understand about privilege and stuff, but I also think that that's still a backlash against fighting for imagination and fantasizing and living out your dreams. I feel like there is, you know, we can't just like box ourselves in this like, yeah, but not, you know,
Yeah.
everyone gets to like blah 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 blah. Like I'm going on a tangent in my brain.
No,
but
please.
I feel like I went traveling in Bali with my best friend who was £1,000 in her overdraft, and I don't think she'll mind me saying that. But
And you know what? You gotta do what you gotta do sometimes.
and we made that shit work, and we came back and she worked 12-hour days doing promo jobs and smashing it back out so that Halifax didn't ruin her life. Oh, can we say banks' names? Halifax.
Yeah, we can. But we can take that out. We can cut it. We'll cut that.
In case Halifax comes for you. I mean, we said it again.
I feel like we should keep that in. I don't even know what Halifax is. You said that.
It's a bank. Like, it's a bank.
In the UK.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a different country because I am in a different country. I feel like this is a third world to me sometimes. Halifax. Who names a fucking bank Halifax? That sounds like
It's a place.
it sounds like an antidepressant. Like Halifax, get that, and you won't want to die all the time. Like that's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a place in North England called Halifax, and they have a bank. And I don't know if they have.
You guys have the most absurd names, by the way. Can I just say that? Like, you have Primrose Way, View, Second Court, Homs Dewsbury. And that's just, and it's like one road that's like off the main road that only goes one way. And you can only fit like, I don't know, like a Fiat. That is like the type of roads that you guys have.
Yeah, I know. We were trying to hide around corners from enemies with swords and shit.
Not enemies with swords when y'all are the biggest colonizers ever. Sorry.
I'm talking like Viking era.
Shit. And that's on the Last Kingdom. And that's on the Last Kingdom.
And that's on 15th century. But,
Which, by the way, I'm very fascinated by.
yeah, really?
The like Vikings and
The
like.
Viking, yeah, mad.
Did you do a lot of research for the TV series for it?
Well, the thing is about the TV series itself is like it's so, in terms of like Viking shows that are out there, because it talks a lot about like King Alfred. He was like the first king to like document, like probably write down like history and document everything that was going on. So in terms of like being factually correct, it's like one of the most factually correct shows out there. So luckily I didn't come until season 3, so I just watched the first seasons and I was like, I feel like I know this.
Unreal. I want to bring us back to fantasy with the Last Kingdom as well, because I feel like Vikings, medieval, huzzah, like very Renaissance shit is all to do with fantasy. And I feel like when you're younger, you always have like those. And I sound like such a mean girl, but like, you know, those like nerds in like or like elementary school that like were like reading all the time, like bookworms, blah, 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 but they have the most vivid, incredible imaginations that you know that they're just like, their mind is so colorful and so picturesque. Did you have to tap into that when auditioning and when becoming a part of the cast for The Last Kingdom?
Of course, and I think that is like touching on why we do what we do, right?
Yeah.
Because that is like crack. Like pretending anything, but just especially like olden days, like
Period pieces make me actually wet. Like, it's true. It's
they are horny. They're really horny.
Yeah, I think as artists and creatives, we're always, and I think we're so lucky to be able to have like the people around us to push us to fantasize. As an actor, I feel like when we're approaching a character, and I want to segue into the actor part of it because you are an incredible artist and your craft. I've seen it. I have watched it. I've literally watched you rehearse from like on stage in a black box theater onto an actual major screen on Netflix. And seeing that,
That's actually hella cute.
that is really beautiful. And like seeing you become the artist that you are today, and like even like helping you write like part of your director's speech for what you just filmed, you know, you're multifaceted. You're one of the most fascinating humans I've actually ever. No, I've told you this before. Your mind, you will think 2 + 2 is 4 because it is 4, but then you'll be like, but what if? What if we could add it to 5, and this is why?
And that's on foundation bar.
And that's on, that's on, I got a 19 on the ACT in math, which is one of the lowest scores you could get, actually. It's okay, I got a 34 for the reading. So I think we have to, and this is something I admire about you, you always think outside the box. And I think you always question, and you're never, and this is something my professor told me. He said, always approach things with curiosity, not criticism.
Right.
And you always do that.
Yeah,
And I feel like, what are your thoughts on Gen Z today with romanticizing, fantasizing? Because I know it's a massive trend on TikTok. Like, romanticize your life, fantasize about it, live the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
Is that actually doable? Or are we just saying it for the sake of the trend?
I think it is, of course it's doable. We've seen, like, people do it. And, like, I hate when the boomers or, like, our parents are like,
Yeah, fuck you, boomers.
You have to, like, be realistic or be, like, the greatest minds that like, went and owned, like, you know, conglomerates to people who are the biggest fashion designers, artists, like, at one point, they all just said, I want to do that, and, like, did it, you know? There's no, like, of course, there's luck and timing and things that play into it, but at first, it starts with fantasy. It's always where it starts. And so, even just starting that, like, you've made the right call, you've made the right decision. If that's the kind of trajectory and journey that you want, that you do anything to go on, then that's the first step. So it's, like, ridiculous to say it's not attainable when everyone who's attained it started there.
Yeah.
So, like, make that make sense.
Exactly. And I feel like
I'm not from the Nepo babies, and we love you.
I love nepotism
No, I
babies.
love
I love Nepo babies. I wish I was one, genuinely.
I love the Nepo
I think they're so fascinating to me. But I like what you said, how it comes from somewhere. It all stems from that place of, I'm just going to say fuck it and do it. Because if you really think about it, our mind is always creating scenarios. Even when we're sleeping. With REM sleep, we're creating random shit. Like, I had a dream about, like, I was in the middle of, like, Jurassic Park dinosaur land, but I saved the day. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but your mind wants to be free, and it doesn't want to always be thinking inside the box of what everyone should be thinking about constantly.
Yeah.
And I think it's I think people can say it's an escape. I think it's a route. Does that make sense? I don't think it's an escape. I think it's a route to get to the place that you want to be. I know that for me.
Well, even escaping is a route, because it's...
I agree with you.
Because escaping is just a way of staying... you know, not always, and I think there's, again, levels to this shit, but, like, if you are not in the best place and you have a tendency to not be able to escape it, and you will just spiral into thoughts. Our minds are constantly thinking. We don't not think. There's not a minute that you sit there and you're like, your brain isn't doing something when you're awake or asleep.
Yeah.
So, like, if it's not escaping, it's spiraling, and it's like, and it's being realistic, it's probably going to go the other way, and it's going to be like, but this will never happen, and this could never happen, and it's going to do the opposite.
I do think there is an extreme, though, of fantasizing to the point of no return. And this is where I'm talking about, and I'll explain it. So just this week when we were in Ibiza, right? We went to, went out, thank you. Now I'm like all tanned and I feel good and I'm sun-kissed. But we basically, long story short, was, actually it's a really interesting story, but we had these people like come and steal, like, take my, like, family friend's wallet. Stole his wallet, stole fucking everything. And then we're like, well, it's gone, gotta cancel all his cards. But then he was getting notifications while we were at the bar that they were using his card right then and there. They were at the bar while we were at the bar with them. So we're like, okay, the drama, of course it follows us everywhere. And so we're like, what the fuck is going on? And I know it sounds like I'm going on a tangent. I'm not. I swear to God, I'm going to circle back. But, yeah, exactly. But then the bartender was like, it's this guy. It's a bunch of Italian guys. So we're like, okay, well, we asked them, like, hey, is there any way that you have a wallet? It didn't go exactly like that because, you know, I get a little aggressive. I'm like, where's the fucking wallet? And I start crying. But you had Eva being the diplomat. You had everyone being like, hey, can you please give us the wallet, the cards? This is who it is. And they're like, no, it's not us. It's not us. Long story short, they actually did take it. They left and I found it under the table. And it was this whole, we got kicked out even though they took it. But what I'm talking about fantasizing was my family friend, he was thinking the whole time, since they know where my hotel is and they have my ID, are they going to come and now stab us all?
Yeah, in his mind.
In his mind, that
lining up his address.
they're looking up, they're having identity fraud. They're coming to take every single thing from him. They're waiting for him in the parking lot to like stab all of us, to take all of us, to like harm us. Now, like they're going south of what's the worst possible case scenario that could happen to us tonight. And he wasn't sleeping that night thinking about
Right.
it. And
So
and like where our brains go of like what is the worst case scenario that could happen. No, I think with fantasizing about that, I think anxiety is there.
in terms of like what you were saying before, I think that brings us back to like the definition of fantasy, and is that potentially just fantasy a positive word for overthinking?
I don't.
Right.
I don't think so. I think overthinking is a part of it. I 100% overthinking is a part of it, but I think it's overthinking with imagination.
Right, and married in the two.
Let's do a math formula. Overthinking plus imagination equals fantasy. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But then it's like overthinking plus imagination of that guy coming to the hotel. I mean, that's all in there. That's all visual. That's all imagining. Or unless I'm...
But that is overthinking. What we're doing right now is overthinking.
We're overthinking the word.
Overthinking.
Us will spiral the whole time. It goes an hour into this whole podcast. Us being like, what the fuck are we overthinking? We overthought the whole thing.
We overthought all of it. Oh, God. Well,
Bring us back.
Bring us back. I'm going to bring you back. I feel like in acting, a big thing is to not think, just do. And you just got to dance with the fear and just do it.
Yeah. Don't just do something, stand there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, wait, what? Don't just do something.
Stand there.
I've never heard that.
Yeah, so it's like the saying is don't just stand there, do
something. Yeah.
But sometimes it's like a active phrase of like, don't try and do something,
just stand in your space.
Yeah,
I love that. I want to dive into a little something with you, first of all.
Yeah.
Before we get into something, because I know when everyone thinks about fantasy, they think it's sex. They think it's sexual related, but I think fantasy has no boundaries, and the opportunities are endless of where your fantasies can go. But I want to ask you, specifically you, Millie, what has fantasizing... Why you're like laughing right now? You're like, what the fuck is she
because
gonna ask you?
No, because I'm like British, right? So like you've said sex, and now I'm like giggling.
That's so weird. I feel like you guys are more open with sex than we are.
Do you think?
Yes. I feel like you guys are more likely to just like be like, yeah, I fuck around and I do whatever I want to do, whereas Americans are very much like, don't say that word. No one says sex here ever.
Maybe it's a generational thing as well. I feel like my parents here, they say.
Well, I feel like that's all parents, you know. But I was wanting to bring up, what has fantasizing done for you within your identity into stepping into who you truly are?
I guess there's been a part of like fantasies about like women, and like whilst I was like in straight relationships that I hadn't fulfilled, and then have, and then there's been fantasies I've fantasized about like locations that that, you know, then you're kind of more inclined to do and try and just like that.
Yeah, so, and the reason why I bring that up is because I feel like so often our fantasies are actually, like when we're younger, thinking about X, Y, or Z, it's actually leading us to be who we really want to be and to live the life that we really want to. Because since I've known you, you've only been in straight relationships.
Right.
And I found out like you have a girlfriend now who's fucking incredible, by the way.
She's the best.
She's amazing. If you're watching this, we love you. I mean, when I was younger, I used to think about like girls sometimes with guys and like loving both and like liking them. Like, why am I staring at her boobs? Like, what? This isn't normal.
Yeah, I was such a boob starer, but I never really... that makes me sound like such a pervert.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not.
Like, I never really was like... I never really understood if it was like, oh, I like them attractively, or I'm like, I don't have any and I'm jealous.
Yeah. And then here you are in a queer relationship, and you're like, oh...
And I like them and I'm jealous.
Yeah, and you're like, and two things can exist at once. But what is one of the biggest things, like, just... taking away, whether that is your sexuality or not, like that fantasizing And fantasy has led to you and your identity.
Well, I guess it's really interesting as well because, like, what's the thing that we all, like, as young girls conditioned to fantasize about the most growing up is that wedding day, right? And that's such a main character moment. Like, we imagine that day, it's all about you, it's all about the dress that you wear, and it's a main goal in life that is conditioned since we watched Bride Wars when we were 2, or like whatever.
27 dresses, best fucking movie. Like we all thought about that one day.
Right, you know, like, and that carries on. I feel like it's such a childhood thing. You always carry that with you, and therefore think about, oh, that day or whatever. And I think it's interesting when you break down the traditional conditioned aspects of that and the fantasies of that, and you realize, like, okay, maybe
Exactly.
I don't want any of that. And that's like a reductive fantasy moment.
Is it reductive or is it just...
Well, no, reductive's the wrong word, you're right.
Or is that just realizing more about yourself than you didn't know because of fantasy?
Yeah.
And I feel like we've said fantasy 1,900 million times in this episode, but that's the point of this episode.
You know what else we need to watch after this?
Huh.
Fantasia. No, I really just took it there, sorry.
I've never watched Fantasia.
Unreal.
What is it about?
The Walt Disney Fantasia?
No.
Wow. Okay.
We'll talk about that after. But I think for me, realizing so much about my identity is like when I'm on the Stairmaster at the gym or when I'm working out, I have thought and plotted out my perfect Met Gala look. Anna Wintour doesn't know that, but she's already invited me to the Met. I'm going to be a guest in the next couple of years.
You've RSVP'd.
I've already RSVP'd. I already know who's taking me. I'm already having Suhair Murad or Elisab or a Lebanese or Arab designer dressing me. I know what I'm wearing, and I know, and I'm going to tell you why what I'm wearing and what I'm doing plays into my identity, and that I realized more than I thought. Because the Met Gala is like huge day that everyone watches, and it's like, oh my God, like I feel like it's a chance for me to show up and show out as myself. So I'm wearing I think about this as I'm like sweating buckets, like up there, like almost on the verge of cardiac arrest. Like I'm wearing gold everything, stripped down to the T, metal almost like the Zendaya moment of, you know, when she was like not like the prince almost, like with her red hair. But everything's gold. I'm wearing like a little like
a Joan of Arc moment.
Almost Joan of Arc, but like an Arab Joan of Arc, and I have a sword.
Wow.
So it's kind of a Grimes too. And then I'm wearing like a beautiful either a nude or red lip and like long nails, but it's slit on the side so my leg is showing. Heels, and it's a gown, and it's metal, and it's beautiful. And I realized so much of it has to do with my Lebanese heritage. And I didn't realize that because I have been feeling a little disconnected from my culture because I haven't been there in so long. And I'm excited because I'm literally going this week since 2019.
Wow.
And I know because of the panorama and then the Beirut explosion, but
Wow. You haven't been since?
no.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
So I'm very excited, but I didn't realize how like far removed I was until I started fantasizing about what I'm wearing to the Met Gala. That sentence, isn't that so? And like I was like, why is my whole outfit centered around Lebanon and Middle Eastern culture? And I'm like, because I feel so far removed, that now that's a time to reclaim and take that back as mine.
Yeah.
Because it is.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not going to the Met Gala next year, or so we think, I'm not doing any of this. I'm actually at a fucking equinox climbing to make my ass plumpier. Like, that is what I'm doing. But in that moment, I'm like, this is my heritage and I need to show it out to the world. And I'm doing that at the Met with Anna Wintour. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, of course it does. It's like you're marrying you through these kind of like what are not, by the way, but what could be deemed as like superficial in like fantasies of like whatever. You've actually been able to like analyze that and look into it and go, okay, what is something that I'm clearly not recognizing and feeling, which is that you feel disconnected from your culture and your country. That is like crazy. And I think as you said that, I thought, okay, well, what do I fantasize the most about? And it is about acting, but it's not about me acting in the roles that I want to do. It's always about doing something on a scale that is like hugely, like the magnitude is crazy. And I think that isn't actually, if I think about it, something that I genuinely personally, I mean, if I get to just make a living from acting to do what I love doing, then like that's absolute goals, like whatever, I'm gonna be like the happiest person in the world. But actually, I think that magnitude thing, I think that might be me then going home and being like to my parents, how proud are you?
Ah,
Because it's so big.
yeah.
But maybe, and it's so interesting because I only really thought about that as you were saying that. Like, what is that?
What is that moment for you? What is
Yeah.
that? And is that like, it's that fantasy of just having that moment of your parents saying, I'm proud.
But yeah.
And what does that say about your relationship with your parents? And what does that say your feelings of being proud of yourself?
Right.
And I think you can spiral, obviously, and say, like, what does all of that mean? But I think it's important too, because it teaches you more about yourself
Yeah.
and your identity.
Like, I've never fantasized about acting as an ex-man or an ex-woman, but actually I've fantasized about taking my little brothers to see me in it, and then just...
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yes. Like, it's not a personal... Like, what is that disconnection of those fantasies, you know?
Exactly. It's funny because with acting, I always say, like, if you're doing it for the fame and you're doing it for the money, you're doing it for the wrong reason. Don't get
100%.
you could be getting the fame and money off influencing or off fucking doing tech or some shit. This is
OnlyFans.
or OnlyFans, by all means. Like, do what you gotta do. Love that. But like, this is like, I think about like fantasizing, like taking my parents to the Venice Film Festival for my movie debut, and like seeing my parents like walk. And like just watching them like sit down for the theater and like getting excited. It's not even about me walking onto the red carpet. It's my parents.
Or what it's about, yeah.
Oh, it's about watching my little brother and sister being like, that's my sister. Like, that's like, this is my brother and sister. Like, these are my babies. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's that fantasy, and sure, call it fucking manifesting because that's what's gonna happen. And I feel like you could just see our energy shifts of the what ifs of one day this will happen, because now it's going to happen because we're putting that out in the world. And people will be like, oh no, you have to work hard to do it. Absolutely. But if you don't have that fantasy, then it's not going to work.
Exactly. You have to have both. Marry the two.
Yeah. Fantasies.
Fantasy. So,
What sweet fantasy. And we'll be right back. All right.
All right.
So I ask all my guests this.
I was feeling so much calmer before you said that. This one.
No, the pressure's fucking on you. There's like a gun to your back. Oh wait, there's no guns in the UK because they actually have gun control. US, take notes. I want to ask you, because this is called main character with Yasmin. What is your most and biggest main character moment of your life? Or when has there been a time where you have felt your main character energy? I go into explicit detail.
Main character moment. Well, there's two answers. There's a very obvious basic answer, which was when I was a main character on a TV show, and like that was like a standard like dream reached, goal reached, forever reached. Well, I mean, it was not just. I mean, it was a whole lead cast, but I mean, in terms of like the acting industry, everyone dreams about that day that they see their name next to the board on the call sheet or whatever. I think no one's lies about that, but obviously it was a big cast, lead cast, 6 of us, all like names. Other than that, you were there, and it was my last birthday, and I had been through a bit of a rough time, and I had no idea that the girls had organized. Like, I remember Eva being like to me, what do you want to do for your birthday? And I was like, oh, like, it's the 2nd of Jan, like, no one really cares, like, it's like after New Year's Eve, like if people are down for like a dinner, that would be lush, like Steve, whatever. And she was like, let me organize it. And she did everything, and then a couple of my other friends like organized a surprise breakfast where you guys all turned up, and like just like that to feel that kind of love and adoration from the closest people. And it was like my day, and everyone was like all the balloons and like Millie, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And it was that, a whole, like, which is really interesting because I don't necessarily always feel comfortable in that space in terms of, like, decisions on you, what do you want, da 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 da. But that day was just beautiful for me. And that was my main character. Well, not main character because everyone that I cared about in my life was there and genuinely wholeheartedly wanted to just be there and celebrate me, and everyone was just like so aware of what I was going through at the time and just being like the best friends, best people. And so that was my main character moment.
So it felt like everything that you said to me, it felt like you're the main character of that film and we were all your supporting roles to support the protagonist of the feature.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful that we got to do that for you, because I feel like in life, if we're not living life as the main character of our own storylines, then what the fuck are we doing?
And that's exactly why I love this podcast so much, because I just think people do not understand the meaning of main character, and they think it's wrapped up in like narcissism or like whatever, but like it's just so logical. Like you watch a film through the main character's eyes, and if you're not watching your life through your own eyes, like what the fuck are you doing?
if you're not constantly rooting for yourself and advocating for your pleasure and your joy, then you're not living.
No.
And that's just bottom line.
And you're probably being a protagonist in an antagonist in other people's lives.
I think you're being, and I actually think you're being the antagonist of your own life. And I think that's the sad part. But I'm so grateful for you sharing that with me, because that's all we want in life, is to just be the main character of your life and to share the other main characters of others' lives.
Exactly.
So I'm so grateful. Thank you for talking about fantasy and reality with me and everything in between. I'm so excited. You can catch Millie, in her next movie that she directed. She's not in it, but she did direct it. Oh, Rat, and it's coming out very soon.
Yeah.
We'll link it. And make sure to like, subscribe, download, rate Main Character with Yasmin on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll see you next week. Thank you, Millie.
Thank you, babe. Oh, I love you.
I love you.
Mwah.
Make sure to like, subscribe, download all future Main Character with Yasmin episodes, and major thank you to our incredible editor and producer, Max Shepardson. I'll see you next week. Bye!